Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
Hey Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
I think I chose this because it's probably the weirdest film on Netflix, and it still kind of baffles me that it is on Netflix.
I think it is one of those films that if you give it a chance, you could really get swept away with it.
Just really, really, really loved the band. I loved their outfits. Loved all their songs. The club as well. The set design and the costume design. Brilliant.
Sometimes it's difficult to know where you are. I think it's quite slippery, like a fish, you might say.
Very good.
I don't really know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today I'm joined by Lillian.
Hello.
Laura.
Hi.
Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the Polish drama, horror, rom-com, fantasy, whatever, the lure.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher.
Hello film fans, welcome to Flixwatcher podcast. Joining us today we have Lillian and Laura. Over to you please, Laura, to say hello and tell the listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi there, my name's Laura Venning. I'm a freelance film critic, writer, occasional appearer on podcasts. I've written for places like Little White Lies in print and online.
Yay!
BBC, yay! BBC Culture, a bit of work for Curzon. Lots of little bits here and there, mostly writing about things like period dramas, queer cinema, lots of good stuff.
This is neither. But we'll get to that.
This is neither.
in a second. And who are you in the top right-hand corner of my screen? I don't know how Lillian's appears on your other screens.
Hello, I'm Lillian Crawford. I am basically exactly the same person as Laura, as it turns out, from that list of publications and what she does. I am also a freelance writer, do lots of stuff with Little White Lies, BBC Culture. What else do I do? Empire, Sight and Sound, all different places. And I run a podcast called Listen to Lillian, all about British cinema, and I co-host a podcast called Autism Through Cinema, which is all about representations of autism in film.
Can you tell us a bit about what British cinema mean, how that's kind of changed over the decades, and how you talk about it in your podcast?
The one about British cinema is stems from sort of my more academic interest in post-war British cinema and representations of women in the 1940s and 50s, and how that sort of changed since then, which Laura has been on. Laura and I talked about Sense and Sensibility on that, so that was a lot of fun.
We've had Sense and Sensibility, haven't we, Helen?
We have.
You weren't that big a fan.
I was not a huge fan as everyone else, yeah.
I was more of a fan than I expected to be. So
good.
Helen, I'm shocked. I'm shocked and appalled, but I'll rate it.
It's one of those ones that sometimes people pick a film and you're like, sure, of course. And then I was like, actually, this is I really like this. But Helen didn't. But that happens the other way sometimes as well. Lillian, you chose the lure. I'm not sure how best we say it. Can you tell us first of all why you chose it, and then I'll get the timer out. And you have 60 seconds to give us a synopsis, if you can describe it in that short length of time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I chose this because it's probably the weirdest film on Netflix, and it still kind of baffles me that it is on Netflix. It's a film set in the 1980s, based on sort of Undine myths and The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, which comes out of that. And the director, Agnieszka Smoczyńska, she sort of adapts that story into a story about two young women in a nightclub who also happen to be mermaids. And it's a musical, a horror film, a rom-com. It's everything you could possibly want in a film, and it's magical.
Do you want to give us the synopsis?
Oh, that was that. I thought that was the synopsis.
I guess it was.
It's hard to describe because it's like it's a concept film, I guess. There's no real plot. There are the two mermaids, Golden and Silver, and they both just sort of sing their songs and then lust after men and women, and then they lose their ability to do that because they sing, and all mermaids know that if you want to be with a man, you've got to have your legs, well, you want legs, so you've got to have your tail cut off in order to get the legs. It's a very simple plot. It's the story of the Little Mermaid, pretty much, just transplanted to nightclub scene in 1980s Poland. I don't really know how else to describe this film. It's pretty wild.
How did you come across this film in the first place?
Yeah, so there's a streaming service called Canopy, which you can get free through libraries and things. I think I had it as a student. I remember one evening just like going on there and watching something, and I was like, oh wow, this is like a independent Polish film about mermaids, and these all sound like great things. So I watched it that way, and kind of fell in love with it. One of the reasons why I love Disney films, and I love the stories of Disney films, and Little Mermaid is one of my favorite films, and I think that this kind of is the grown-up version of that. It takes the sort of coming-of-age elements of The Little Mermaid and makes it much more, I don't want to say realistic, because this is not a realistic film, but Smoczyńska sort of takes that and it tries to make it about her own time growing up in the 80s as a teenager. She was raised in sort of nightclubs, which is where she sort of developed as a person, and that's what this film is about. I also love musicals, and it feels kind of operatic, which is great.
Laura and Helen, have you heard of this film before or even watched it?
I had, yeah. I think I had even started it at some point, and for some reason or another had drifted away. So I was delighted to sit down and finally give it its due, because it's a strange experience, and I kind of think it you need to just sort of let it wash over you, as it were, like an ocean wave. But yeah, I was familiar with it and had been meaning to get back to it for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. But that's like, sometimes it's good to not have expectations met. Like, okay.
I mean, this is exactly why we have guests that pick the films, and not just myself and Helen each week picking films, because it would just be the same.
It's so boring.
We'd never have this. We would never have had Sense and Sensibility had it not been for other people picking it. So it is. I'm astonished this film exists. Thank you for picking it, Lillian. I mean, the first note for this is I need to watch more Polish films, because they generally, like, cinematography in Poland is like on point all the time. It looks really classy and polished, and even for an indie film, it always looks like really well shot. I know Poland has a few like cinematography legends and festivals, so they really do dig that, and I think that shows here. But I had no idea what was going on in this film. It terrified me. At no point was I aroused, even though there's like naked women.
Oh, it didn't arouse you?
No, I mean, even though there's women
because
naked.
I think this film is incredibly sexy.
I didn't feel. I thought it was a bit.
To be fair, maybe it's women sort of eating men and then getting away. So maybe that's not appealing. I don't know. No, I think it is.
Well, I've never found the concept of mermaids interesting. It's a weird. I'm not sure how much of a fancy it is in real life, but the concept of a half half human, half fish, isn't that appealing. And when it manifests, and oh look, I've got a hole which you can use. It's like, that's actually quite gross. I don't. And I know what you said about it being more realistic, quote unquote, but this is more kind of accurate representation of what a mermaid would be, rather than if Little Mermaid, which is one of my favorite Disney films as well. So I was genuinely intrigued by it, but yeah, I'm still processing. I'm still very much processing. Laura, why did you stop it the first time, and how have you finished processing this film for the first time?
Yeah, I honestly can't quite remember why I drifted away from it. I think, yeah, it's really not what I expected. I don't think it's what anyone expected. Tonally, it's quite difficult to describe, because it does veer from the sort of what am I trying to say? It sort of veers from kind of what you might expect from a quote unquote dark fairy tale, or dark modern fairy tale, into these quite broadly exuberant kind of classic musical numbers. I'm thinking particularly of this sequence quite near the beginning where they go to the shopping centre. They go into a department store, and that is very, old Hollywood musical with these hundreds of extras and all doing flips and cartwheels and all kinds of stuff. Whereas most of the music in the film is much more sort of drawing on that 80s setting. And it's kind of got this sort of Greek chorus of other characters who are sort of not really that closely they're not really that relevant to the sort of main story, but they do kind of orbit this world. I'm thinking, for example, of the lead singer of the band in this sort of cabaret club, sort of strip club, where the mermaids come to work, who I can't quite remember if it's the first shot of the film. I don't think it is, but very early on you get a really tight close-up on her face, and that's a motif that's repeated a few times through it.
I think that's one of the things I was thinking about when I was talking about cinematography, because they shoot people's faces really well and clearly in this, which is super engaging. Carry on, sorry.
Yeah, no, and she's just, she's got this kind of strange beauty, but it is kind of otherworldly, but it is sort of beaten down, and quite why she's this sort of figure that reoccurs, I don't know. I suppose what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is that the film has quite a lot of, to me, mysterious aspects to it that can't be easily unraveled or sort of pointed to as kind of what this obviously has to do with the main story. Because like Lillian says, the plot is actually relatively simple once you break it down, but it does have these quite bizarre interludes or kind of diversions, and sometimes it's difficult to know where you are. I think it's quite slippery, like a fish, you might say.
Very good. Well, I think that's part of the appeal of it, particularly in sort of there is a sort of a certain queerness to a lot of that, and to the fluidity of their sexualities, and to identity and the changes of identity that go on. I mean, it's one of the mermaids isn't accepted by the bassist who she likes in the band Figs and Dates, which is a great band name, and he sort of requests that she undergoes this quite horrific procedure where she has her sort of tail cut off and replaced with human legs, with the cost of her voice. It gives a certain rawness to a lot of sort of fairy tales and that I find quite refreshing. I should say that I'm a massive fan of Powell and Pressburger, and Powell and Pressburger's films is something I really love. And they were going to make a film that was a sort of adaptation of The Little Mermaid, that was going to be a big sort of Red Shoes ballet film, and it was going to be absolutely gorgeous, and they never made it. And
gosh, that's
I think
so sad. That must be one of those.
Exactly. I feel like this is the closest someone has come to actually realizing what that film. I mean, Pound and Pressburger would never have made Velour. There's no way that this is the kind of film they would have made. But I guess when I watched it, and having read that in sort of about the production history of that film that never really happened, I guess that's partly why I love it as much as I do, which I think is significantly more than most people who have seen this film.
I know, Helen, you've been slightly quiet on this.
I mean, I guess when did I watch it? Not last night, the night before. So obviously, it's quite fresh in my mind. I find the fascination with mermaids fascinating because they're men. Not you, obviously, Kobe, but a lot of men are obviously kind of drawn to the mermaid and the mermaid idea. But then, when they kind of are faced with the reality, they don't actually want the mermaid because they want her, but they want her with legs. And the kind of wanting something, but not actually wanting what that is. I find that quite interesting in this story. So there's that going on. And then I just really, really, really loved the band. I loved their outfits, loved all their songs, the club as well. The set design and the costume design, brilliant. I also quite like the sort of almost vampiric nature of the mermaids, which kind of a little bit of the mermaid in the lighthouse is sort of a little bit fangy as well. So I feel that mermaids are maybe making a little bit of a resurgence, but being a bit more to what mermaids, I'm not going to say were, because obviously mermaid's fictional, but less kind of like the soft and fluffy mermaid, but the more of the female crossed with the fish, which would be scaly and probably have fish teeth. So yeah, I just thought it was pretty mad. I think the description you gave it being the weirdest film on Netflix, we've watched quite a few films on Netflix, and I would probably say so far, definitely the weirdest one we've had on.
Yeah, we've had a fly. I can't remember what happened with the fly film, which is an early film, Eager.
Yeah. A man turned into a fly. He got reincarnated as a fly, didn't he? Got murdered,
yeah,
and reincarnated as a fly.
Oh wow!
And there's a proper like workout scene as he gets stronger so he can face his foe. So I mean, there's films with very weird scenes. This is probably the weirdest consistent film all the way through. And this reminded me of, what was that Leo Carax's film, Holy Motors?
Holy Motors.
Yeah. That's the kind of clearest film, cleanest comparison I can kind of think of, because there's no, I don't know, there's just, well, that's got lots of non sequiturs. There's no kind of through line through it apart from that one person. And the parts that's shocking, some parts just like sexy. And I don't know, it isn't a direct comparison, but the thematically or the kind of sensation I had watching that was similar to this. And I'm still processing that after, however many years of watching that film. And I haven't seen Leo Carax's newest film they did with the
Sparks Brothers.
Yeah, I still need to watch that.
Yeah, they do, because Annette is very similar to this, actually.
I was thinking
because you mention it, because it's that sort of like rock opera kind of dark aesthetic where it either completely resonates with someone's sensibility, i.e. mine, or it really riles people up the wrong way. So yeah, I think that's a good comparison to make, that these films they're not tremendously popular, but yeah, I love them.
And we had, one reason I love this podcast is when people discuss it and help them peel things. Like when we had Under the Skin on, and I enjoyed it at the cinema, but it didn't quite click with me. And then I can't remember who was on there apart from one of our friends, Will. But then there's a discussion about how when she became a bit more human, she then realised that she couldn't connect with the world and she couldn't like tap properly. I think something Helen said, that she couldn't tap the rhythms properly because she was still this kind of alien under the skin. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh shit, that's actually, yeah, I never got that. I never would have uncovered that had we not had that discussion. And then I could see why there's lots of quite a few revered critics, is one of their favourite films of the year. And this is I still feel there needs to be a bit unpicked for me in this. But I did like almost like the reverse of Little Mermaid, where she loses her voice at the end after he's had a chance to fall in love with her or not. And also my main kind of overriding thought was, men are scum, aren't we? Like making her undergo this horrific operation and then having sex with her when she was still like in 2 parts, and then going, nah, I fancy this one now. and that was it. So I was quite glad he died.
It's a wonderful
It's satisfying, isn't it?
I think maybe there's a particularly very, very kind of female fascination with mermaids. This is obviously a big generalization, but I think something about, I was just kind of thinking like, why do we love mermaids? And I think maybe even though they are figures which are, they're sirens that tempt men down into the waters, that's their sort of purpose in myth. But I think there is something very appealing about them, and maybe that's because, do they kind of represent freedom, do you think, Lillian? Because they kind of, this idea that maybe they can remove themselves from our world and they can kind of exist in this in-between state, but they never have to stay in our world for very long. And, our world's a bit rubbish, really. Like, wouldn't you rather live under the sea? There's a sense of liberation. And maybe also just, growing up is just a series of transformations of various kinds, bodily transformation and kind of discovery of, sex, your body and how to use it. And those things have seemed very pertinent to the mermaid myth and to this story in particular. So I wonder if that's, all those things have got something to do with the kind of ongoing appeal of the mermaid.
Yeah, definitely. Although I'm not so sure that freedom is, I mean, there's a lot of constrictions to that freedom, and there's a lot of rules about sort of, if you do one thing, you'll turn into sea foam, and if you do another, then you'll lose your voice, and you can't really win. I don't know if any of you have seen Undine by Christian Petzold, which is sort of the most similar contemporary film about sort of using mermaids. I mean, I hated The Lighthouse. The mermaid lady in The Lighthouse is just like a massive vagina for Robert Pattinson to fuck, and I didn't really vibe with that. Whereas in Petzold's Undine, it's more about that sort of that kind of dilemma of how what you can do without sort of letting go, or the extent to which a woman has freedom to just sort of pursue what her heart and what her sexuality desires. And I think that's what Smoczyńska is trying to do with this film. But you're right in it's sort of the terms of bodily transformation, that there's another film about, is it called Blue Fin or something? I can't remember what it's called. Do you know the one I mean? Maybe not. I've just remembered that other.
I've seen Splash
other film exists.
Ponyo and The Little Mermaid.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the next version of Little Mermaid. And I think that's it for Mermaid.
Ponyo kind of does something similar with that, about sort of developing and growing up. And I mean, all of these stories are about that, is where there are restrictions placed on women, bodily or otherwise, that are placed on sort of having a massive tail, I guess.
Is there anything else, guys, you want to say before we head to the scores?
Just that maybe that it made me feel inspired to like put loads of glitter on, go out dancing. I don't know about you, but I was watching this the other night. Like, I haven't been out for a while. I need to do that. It looks fun. It's been too long.
I think it does. There was that thing. I think Helen nailed it as well. I'm not sure I was as enamored with the club, so with the band as you were, but there was that thing about when you just go out, you're not sure where you're going to end up. You just go into this random bar, and it ends up being like the best night of your life, and then you take your friends there the next time, and it's like so the worst place in the world. But it's one of those kind of places where it could be the best night or the worst night, depending on just a myriad of different variables that you couldn't ever control. But everyone there seems to be having quite a nice time, didn't they?
Yeah, and I suppose it's probably going to be the best, or at least most memorable night of your life if you see a mermaid. That's pretty memorable. Yes. So all depends on the mermaid factor.
Just make sure she doesn't get too close to your larynx.
Okay, so we head to the scores.
You're listening to a stripped media podcast. It might be discussing film, TV, cakes, even dogs.
Possibly all four.
Very possibly. But only one show on the network focuses on the musical medium, and that show is Song by Song.
Yeah, Song by Song is a podcast that discusses the music of Tom Waits, the gravelly-voiced singer, whose work we think is more than worth your time. And to be honest, we wouldn't have spent literally years making this podcast if we didn't think that was true.
Probably not. Every week, we take some of his music, we share it with a variety of guests from different backgrounds and disciplines, and we discuss how it works and how it makes us feel.
Our latest season is listening to the compilation of covers and rarities called Orphans, which is over 60 songs of his music. So amongst that, there's probably going to be something that will pique your interest.
So once you've finished this current episode you're listening to, why not type Song by Song into your podcast app and join us for a track or two.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. They are always out of 5. You may have decimal places if you wish. And we will start with you, please, Lillian, with your recommendability.
This is very easily a 5 for me, hence why I have brought it to this podcast. I think that everyone should see this film, and I have no idea what they'll get out of it, but I can promise that it will be different to anything else you have seen before.
Laura.
Yes, I mean, difficult. What does recommendability really mean? I will say that when I described this film to my girlfriend the other night, they said, "No way, I'm going to bed."
And that's without even starting it.
Yeah. But I think it is one of those films that if you give it a chance, you could really get swept away with it. So I think it probably balances out as about a 3, because it's certainly not for everyone, but it is truly one of a kind.
Yeah, sure. Helen.
I've already recommended it to someone, so it's off to a good start. I think I would probably sort of give some sort of maybe a little bit of a comparison. I think I'd probably say if you've kind of seen maybe like Raw and you kind of enjoyed a lot of things going on with that, if you were one of the people who enjoyed The Shape of Water, then yeah, maybe. And if you kind
Shape of Water, Mermaid, yeah, I can feel that as well.
Sex fish fantasies, yeah. I mean, if you like fish, yeah. And musicals.
Do you like sushi?
I like sushi. You like, the way fish look and their scales and find them interesting and intriguing, then this is 100% for you. But I am also going to recommend it to lots of people, like if they ask me for Halloween picks, just for funsies. But going to go for a solid 4 on it, I think, for this one, because it is super weird but fun.
I'm going to go for a 2.8 here. I feel that I know there's a few people who definitely I could recommend it to and say, look, it's going to be a bit strange, just go with it. And then there'll be people who, if I thought about recommending it to, I would have to sit them down a bit and say it's going to go into places you don't expect. And there's going to be lots and lots of people who will just be like, Kobe, what the hell are you doing? I want Fast and Furious, or something of that kind of ilk. So yeah, I think 2.8 feels about right for me. How do films like this get made? Because it generally is astonishing. I don't know what the pitch. I don't think it could be a Hollywood film, and this is why you got to love independent and non-English language cinema. I think sometimes, but I've no idea how popular this would have been in Poland when it first came out, or how well regarded it is. So I don't know, Lillian, is there any background, any light you can cast?
I'm really sorry, I really don't know. I've been thinking about this because it feels like it's incredibly impressive. As Laura said, some of the musical numbers are huge, and the effects are amazing, and the cinematography is incredible, and just everything about it. I mean, this film looks almost as good as The Shape of Water does, and that film was almost certainly made for millions and millions more than this one was. So I really don't know is the honest answer. I'm just glad that it was.
It magically got washed up on the beach. Exactly. I'm just continuing this metaphor. It just appeared out of the sea one day mysteriously. We just don't know.
Yeah, because also the actors are properly into it as well, aren't they? There's no one that seems to be as we had Robert De Niro on Jackie Brown recently, who at the start of that film is like, almost thinking, what the hell am I doing here? This is nonsense. And no one in this film seemed to have that kind of shape to them. So Lillian, repeat viewing score.
Yeah, I've seen this film quite a few times, and will continue to do so. And it is on Netflix, so I can watch it to my heart's content. So I will give it a 5 again. I also need to watch Smoczyńska's other films. Fugue, I've heard, is amazing, and her latest film, The Silent Twins, has not been released over here yet. So I'm very excited to see that. So yeah, I'll just watch this film ad nauseam.
Laura.
I think I'd probably give this a 3 again. I think it's going to be a little while before I revisit it, but I happily would. And I sort of feel that on a second viewing, some of the slightly bizarre threads or diversions would kind of weave together more neatly, or maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. The mystery is there. They don't. Okay. Fair enough. That's fair enough. Also very valid. But yeah, and I agree with what you were saying, Lillian, earlier. I think this film is sexy and it's fun, and I would revisit. But yeah, I think overall I'd give it a 3.
Helen.
Yeah, I'm also a 3. I think I probably would watch this again. Probably not immediately, but I think it would be a fun watch to watch with someone who hasn't seen it.
Would you be watching the film or watching them?
Probably a bit of both.
Like side-eyeing them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it. I need to watch it again once at least, but not sure how many more times after that I will watch it. And for that, I'm gonna give it a 3 as well, because I think you definitely need to watch it more than once. But the frequency of watching it, I think it will be low for me. Small screen score, Lillian.
This is a tricky one because I've only seen it I've seen it on a laptop and I've seen it on a TV. So I guess I would love to screen this. I think it would be incredible in a cinema with a packed audience where you just have to kind of really focus on it. Maybe a sing-along, I don't know.
Brush up on your Polish, everyone. Brush up on your Polish.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've loved it on a small screen. So maybe I'm going to go with like a 4.5 with the addendum that that extra 5 is for how much I want to see this on the big screen. I don't know.
Laura.
Also have only seen it on a small screen. I think it does play quite well on a small screen. I think it's visually gorgeous, but I think it's also, I don't feel like I lost anything from watching it at home. I found myself very drawn into it and didn't, I managed to put down the distractions and really focus in. So I think I'd give it a 4.
Nice. Helen.
I think it was fine watching it on TV, but I would absolutely love to see this at the cinema. So if you manage to program it, then please let us know, because I would love to see it. I feel some films, they just are kind of brought out with the experience, like watching Titan. I'm not going to say Titan, even though I want to, in a cinema. Like, I've had chances to watch it since at home, but I just don't think I would get the same experience. So it's great, and it's on Netflix, and it's probably the only place you're going to find it. So that is great, but I would like to see this with people big. So yeah, 4.5 as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 4.5 as well. I think I get the potential buzz of seeing it in the cinema with other people for the first time. Seeing how other people react to different things as well is something that I thoroughly enjoyed from the cinema, and I think this will get a whole load of interesting reactions. And I don't know where it would land at any point in this film. So I think it'd be interesting. Yes, 4.5. Engagement score, Lillian.
This is easily a 5. I mean, have you seen this film? If you look away for a second, something insane happens. So why would you do that? It's just it constantly develops and shifts and changes. And the first time you watch it, you have no idea what's coming. I love it so much. 5s.
Laura.
I think I would go with a 4. It's very, just very visually arresting. Like Lillian says, you do not know what's going to happen next. it kind of, as much as I didn't understand some of it, I wasn't bored for a single second. Like, how could you be? Everything's covered in glitter and blood and all those
sea foam.
Things. Exactly, sea foam. Yeah, all the textures, all the taste, smells, colours, everything.
Helen?
Yeah, it's a tight 1 hour, 28 minutes, so it's like super, super short as well. I felt that it maybe lost a little bit its momentum sort of nearish the end. I think when she gets her legs, it didn't quite have like the energy that it had in sort of the first hour, but that's only like a small slight on that. So 4.5.
I'm going to go for 4. Mainly for the not knowing in any way, shape or form where it's going to end. And the way I kind of see the little plot points is to, like, if you marry him, if you fall in love with him and then get married and gets married later, then you have until X time until you turn into sea foam or you have to eat him. That becomes like almost a driving point for the latter part of the film. And I didn't know which way it was going to go. I genuinely thought she was going to eat him, and I was quite disappointed that she didn't. Sorry, I was quite disappointed that Silver didn't eat him, but then I was quite happy that Golden did eat him. Well, killed him at least. Yeah, so 4.5. Oh, did you say 4.5, Helen?
Yeah.
And that gives us an overall score of 4.01875.
Yeah, I've really pulled that up, haven't
I? Very high.
Which is higher than I thought it'd be going into this session. I wasn't sure where it's going to go, but I didn't think it's going to be going over the 4 mark. Thank you very much, Lillian, for bringing it to us. I hope you're happy with that score. It's a decent one.
Yeah. And I thought you were going to hate it. Sorry, so I'm just happy. I'm delighted.
I'm just baffled by it. And it's kind of, maybe it's sung a siren and kind of enchanted me in some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Lillian, Laura, can you tell us where we can find you guys online, and we'll say goodbye to all the listeners?
You can find me on Twitter at Lil Crawford, with 2 L's in the middle of that. I'm often on the Little White Lies podcast and in Little White Lies online and in print, Sight and Sound, Empire, Girls on Tops, and the, as I said at the start, the Autism Through Cinema podcast, which comes out, I think, weekly now, where we talk about autism in films. So, yeah, please do check that out on all the places where you can find podcasts.
Well, essentially, where you listen to this now, you can find it here. Don't like search a different podcast app. Just where you listen to this one, go there.
We're there.
Laura,
you can find me on Twitter with all the other film nerds in the world at Laura_Venning. Many tweets about films and all kinds of other things, and you can also find my writing. I have a little website which is just Laura Venning, that's with a V for Victor, .com, which just has my portfolio and all the places I write for. So yeah, that's where to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for bringing Laura to the table, and we'll say goodbye to everyone.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.